Hello friends, I hope this video finds you well. I hope you're healthy, I hope you're staying warm. Today I'm sharing some of my favorite things that I have cooked and eaten over the past week, and maybe this will give you some inspiration, some new recipe ideas, or just some good vibes. Something I've been eating a lot lately, and this is a recipe I always come back to and I have for the past several years, is this vegan version of egg salad made with tofu, of course. Growing up, I was always a big fan of any mayo-based salad, so chicken salad, tuna salad, and of course, egg salad. So these are really nostalgic recipes for me, and I find myself naturally gravitating towards them anytime I'm feeling a little overwhelmed in life, and I just want a food that is gonna help me feel like everything is okay again. So I whipped up a batch of this vegan egg salad, and luckily making it pretty much the exact same way and simply replacing the hard-boiled eggs with tofu tastes delicious. I do like to add a lot of fresh celery in there. I really like the crunch and the flavor, and I like adding a lot of sliced scallions or finely minced onions. I use extra firm tofu, and I don't always press my tofu, but for this recipe it's definitely a must. And there's something very satisfying about watching how effectively this little gadget presses the tofu. I like to create a variety of textures by crumbling half of the pressed tofu and then coarsely chopping the rest of it, because I feel like that's how a real egg salad is, with the crumbly yolks and the egg whites, which are usually I would chop them. Then, of course, you're gonna add in a generous amount of mayo. Really, don't be shy. I remember back when I first went vegan and I got pulled into the whole high carb, low fat fad, I would try to make this recipe, and instead of using mayo, I would use hummus, but the hummus was homemade hummus that I also made without oil, and it was sad. I mean, by all means, if that sounds delicious to you, try that substitution. The point is, for me, I love mayo, and I'm really glad that I'm able to enjoy some of my favorite foods now without feeling guilty or stressing out about it. So here I've added some dill for flavor, some turmeric for color, nutritional yeast to make it a bit more savory, lemon juice just to brighten everything up, and a fair amount of black salt, which you can find at your local Indian market, and that's gonna give it that familiar kind of eggy flavor. And I like to pop it in the fridge for a few hours before eating it. I'm gonna pause to say a few quick words about the sponsor of today's video, Ritual. If you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you may know I love Ritual. I've been taking their Essential for Women multivitamin for many years now. And if you didn't know, Ritual also makes vegan protein powder. Their essential protein powder contains 20 grams of pea protein per serving, and it's completely free of gluten, GMOs, and soy. This is a formula that's designed to help you build lean muscle mass, support your bone health, and keep full. It contains no added sugar. It's sweetened with a combination of fermented sugar cane and monk fruit. What I love about Ritual is that their ingredients are fully traceable, so they're very transparent about where they source their ingredients from, and they're all really high quality. So for example, the handcrafted flavor in their essential protein comes from vanilla beans, which are sustainably harvested in Madagascar and purchased straight from farmers.
Do we mention that it also tastes really good? Unlike a lot of protein powders, Ritual doesn't have that chalky texture or that artificial sweetener flavor. It just tastes like food. The vanilla flavor that they use in here, you can tell is really pure. It's like when you get a really high quality vanilla ice cream, and you don't usually get that in something like a protein powder.
Ritual Essential Protein comes in daily formulas crafted for people 18 plus, 50 plus, and for pregnancy and postpartum. So whoever you are, Ritual has got you covered. If you'd like to try out Ritual for yourself, you can get 20% off your first month by visiting ritual.com/SarahVegan20 or using my code SarahVegan20 at checkout. Thank you again so much to Ritual for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back to the recipes. So here is a recipe that I have recently fallen back in love with. It's for carrot lox. I used to love smoked salmon prior to going vegan, and this recipe is not, 100% accurate substitution, but even as just their own thing, they taste delicious. What you're gonna do is find the fattest carrots you can, clean them really thoroughly. You don't need to peel them, and then you're gonna wrap them into a pouch either with aluminum foil or parchment. You want to make sure to seal the edges. If you have some kind of roasting pan with a lid, you could potentially use that too. The idea is that we want to roast them while still trapping in the steam. So after about an hour, they are super tender. There's a little bit of caramelization on the bottom, but they're not overly browned. After they're cool enough to handle, you can thinly slice them. I like to cut them on a bias just so I can get longer pieces. Then you're gonna toss them in a really simple marinade with some olive oil, liquid smoke, apple cider vinegar, and salt. Sometimes I use soy sauce instead of salt, just kind of depends. Toss to coat and then pop those in the fridge for a few hours to marinate. Now, the reason I had made the carrot lox in the first place was because a few days prior, I had made a batch of bagels. These were actually a bit of a failure, but I still wanted to share just to kind of normalize recipes coming out less than perfectly. When I was making the bagels, I lost track of time. I'm very easily distracted, and sometimes I will forget to start the timer. My bagels were very overproofed, and they were also sticking to the plastic that I covered them with. They did come out very flat and a little bit dense in the center, but the best thing about bread is that even when it doesn't come out perfectly, it still usually tastes good. And then I remind myself that humans have been making bread for thousands of years without any fancy tools, without timers and thermometers, and it's very easy to compare your results when you're cooking to something you've seen someone make on social media or something that you'd buy at the store. But at the end of the day, it's just really cool that bread is something that every culture has its own version of. It's something that we've been making for so much of human history, and I get to make it in my own home. So breakfast for most of this week has been one of my homemade bagels, toasted and topped with either some of my tofu egg salad and or some of my carrot lox with some cream cheese, little squeeze of lemon, some fresh dill and scallions, and some extra flaky sea salt, and I've really been looking forward to it. Speaking of breakfast, as far as coffee goes, we are in a drip coffee phase right now. We had like every single brewing method for coffee except for an actual coffee pot until recently. We just got one, and honestly, we love it. We really like iced lattes and espressos during the warmer months, but when it is cold outside, there's just something so comforting about a big cup of dark coffee with just a little splash of creamer. Eric has been getting out of bed before me and listening to his audiobook and making us a pot of coffee, and I get a few extra minutes of sleep because I have trouble falling asleep. And then I get woken up with coffee, so it's a pretty sweet arrangement for me. I can't complain. Another of my favorite recipes I've made this past week has been my soy milk miso ramen. I was inspired to make it because we were at Natural Grocers and I spotted these really beautiful shiitake mushrooms, and I splurged on a few of those, and I just thought they would be really good sauteed and put on top of ramen. This ramen broth is so flavorful, it's spicy, it's got a lot of garlic and a lot of fresh ginger, and I don't even measure them anymore. I just chop up several tablespoons of each along with a few scallions. This recipe is a little bit time consuming just because I prefer to cook all the toppings separately and add them to the top of the ramen. But if you wanted to speed it up a lot, you could just add them directly into the broth and cook them that way. But ahead of time, I blanched the kale for just a few minutes, and then in that same water, I boiled my mung bean sprouts for around 10 minutes till they were very, very tender. As for the mushrooms, they're already so flavorful on their own, so all I did was saute them with some vegan butter, a little bit of salt and pepper, and they tasted so incredible I literally had to stop myself from eating them all out of the pan. Now for our broth base, I steep a piece of konbu in boiling water. Usually I add in a handful of dried shiitake mushrooms, but I was out of those, so I made up the balance with a little bit of yondu, which is a vegetable umami seasoning. And while those were steeping, I got started sauteing my aromatics. I use sesame oil, so I add in my minced ginger, garlic, and scallions, and I saute those. Then I add in chili paste and miso paste. You keep stir frying all that together until it starts to kind of stick to the bottom of the pan and caramelize, and this just adds layers and layers of flavor. Then you deglaze with some mirin, and then you add in soy sauce, so there's another layer of umami in there. Then goes in your dashi, and you bring it up to a boil, and you add in about a cup of plain unsweetened soy milk. I would imagine you could use really any kind of plain unsweetened plant milk. I think oat milk would be really delicious in this. Maybe even coconut if you didn't mind the flavor of it. Just preferably something with some body. You know, you don't want to add in a kind of plant milk that's really thin and watery. I really, really like these millet and brown rice ramen noodles by Lotus. But you could really use any kind of noodles you like. Sometimes I'll even just steal the noodles from a packet of instant ramen. So I cook the noodles separately and then I spoon the broth over them, and then I add all my toppings individually, my bean sprouts, my kale. I topped it with some soft tofu this time and my super delicious mushrooms. And then I like to add on some furikake and some fresh scallions. And yeah, this is just one of my all-time favorite meals when I have the energy to prepare all of the components.
All right, everyone, this is Eric taking over the voiceover for this section. Sarah kind of just requested I make a really simple garlicky pasta this week, so I did just that. We got these beautiful multicolored cherry tomatoes, and I just broke them down in a pan with some olive oil and lots of garlic, and then I added in a bunch of fresh basil. It's like an entire package of fresh basil, a bunch of freshly grated vegan parm, a tiny bit of vegan butter, and a lot of the pasta water to get it all to stick together. And I just threw in cooked bow ties, a squeeze of lemon at the end, and it came out so amazingly. I need to kind of perfect it and make it an actual recipe, and then we can put it on the blog. But I'm proud of myself for keeping it simple, because I tend to go overboard with spices and ingredients, and sometimes simple's just better. Then later on in the week, we were at the store and we saw Beyond Sausages were buy one, get one free. So Sarah requested a sausage and peppers night. And whenever it's sausage and peppers night, that means I am doing the cooking. But Sarah also wanted some crispy roasted potatoes to go with it. So she cut up some potatoes and tossed them in olive oil with a lot of garlic and a lot of fresh dill and parsley. Then they just got spread out on a pan and popped into the oven. Then it was my turn to step in, so in one pan I started heating some olive oil, and in the other pan I put my Beyond sausages in, and I still, after years, haven't figured out the best way to cook Beyond sausages, whether it's in the air fryer, on the stove, or in the oven, so just let me know your preferred method in the comments. So the sausage and peppers idea actually turned into sausage and peppers and onion and zucchini. So once my oil was hot, I added in all my veggies, and just going back to keeping it simple, all I did was season them with salt and pepper, and that's all you need. They were so flavorful. The potatoes came out perfectly. They were crispy on the outside and fluffy in the middle. And the veggies, I basically just blasted them on high heat for a short amount of time, which lets them cook through but still maintain that crunch, so they don't get all soggy. And then we sat down, loaded up with condiments, which of course, spicy brown mustard, since I'm from New York, some of Sarah's homemade sauerkraut, and we finally found vegan horseradish. It's Bubby's brand, and it packs a punch, and it's so good.
The last thing I wanted to share are my favorite cookies that I make every year during the holidays. I've heard them referred to by many different names: snowballs, butterballs, Mexican wedding cookies, Italian wedding cookies. The base dough is super simple, almost like shortbread, and then you add in ground or chopped nuts, and you can use walnuts, almonds. I like pecans the best. And once you've baked them, you just roll them in powdered sugar, and I specifically made these to enjoy in the mornings with hot coffee or tea. During this time of year, I just really like starting my day off with a little bit of something sweet. So that brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed and can maybe draw some inspiration from it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what are some of your current favorite recipes, and I will see you in my next video.